Well, good morning, everybody. I hope you are surviving Web Summit as well as I am. Look at me, I look fresh-faced and lovely. Let's not talk about the 3 parties we all went to last night, eh? By the way, it is absolutely wonderful, wonderful, wonderful to see all of you here. I mean, joking aside, it's all been a very emotional thing because I don't know about you, but for me, I have seen people that I have not seen in 2 years, 3 years, including Brittany. The amount of hugs that we've had over the last few days has been incredible. And it's incredible to see everybody in 3D and not just pixels on a screen. Couldn't
Brittany, agree more.
Exactly. Now, Brittany, the last time I saw you, we were, I think, in London. We went to a bar. There was a who's who of wonderful people there.
Absolutely.
And since then, I understand that you've taken a new product through alpha, beta, release candidate, and then brought it into the world. Would you like to tell everyone a little bit more about Orion?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I recently became a new mom, so that was the product he's referring to. You are so kind. But also during the past year and a half of the coronavirus shutdown, I think quite a few of you have realized that the data issues that we were talking about in 2018 that splashed across headlines of press around the world have now become exponentially bigger issues than we were dealing with before. We've been producing more data than we ever expected. Even our children have been spending 24/7 in front of a screen just to learn. So the amount of data we've been producing, the amount of information that's being collected about us, and our vulnerabilities to targeting, hacking, phishing attacks, being exposed to disinformation and fake news has been at an all-time high, while the highest percentage of people of all time don't even know where their next paycheck is coming from because of broken supply chains and entire industries that have gone under during the shutdown. So right now, I think talking about data ownership could not be a more important topic, and I think Stewart has always agreed with me on this.
Oh, absolutely. And before we get back to the serious stuff, Orion is the cutest baby I've ever seen. Even my ovaries were popping, seriously. Brittany, I mean, we are talking about a very serious issue. Data is pretty much the most valuable commodity outside of time right now. I mean, time is the most valuable commodity. Data is second. When we think about it, it's more valuable than gold, oil, anything else that we can sell, even printer ink, which is an inordinately expensive thing. But one of the things that I know for sure is that, I think it's too late for everybody at Web Summit in terms of data privacy and security. I know for a fact that if I wanted to, I could go and either look up on the web or buy on the dark web pretty much everybody's information, data, probably your credit card numbers, old passwords, bank details. It sounds really, really grim, but is it really that true? Is it really that bad at the moment for everybody that's, let's say, over the age of 6?
Well, I would hate to break it to you, but most of us sitting here in this room can't exactly get our privacy back. The data that we've already produced that is out there, that is in millions of databases all around the world, is something that is very difficult to claw back. I think we've seen, especially in Europe, in the enforcement of GDPR, people who have gone through the process of submitting a subject access request, which means you want a copy of all of the data that an organization holds on you. You might want to ask them to delete it, or you might also be asking to revoke access to that data for marketing purposes, or of course, all of the above. It's not as easy as it looks. Most information commissioners' offices are having trouble dealing with the piles of complaints that are coming in. And so we need to start to think, besides on a regulatory level, besides the new laws that we're writing, besides the decisions that our governments are making, what can we actually do as individuals? I think this is more of an education and awareness question, as well as a question about what technologies we're using. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, when I think about the problem, there's a few things that come to mind. I mean, we talk about governments. One of the things that really surprised me when I really read through GDPR is that, like most other regulations, there are parts of GDPR that unravel other parts of GDPR. It's difficult to get regulations right, but then I have a hypothesis about a lot of things in life, such as plastics, for example, just to change subject slightly. Everyone's telling us to look after our use of single-use plastics, but the fact is, worldwide, we only actually recycle 9% of plastics. So that's a top-down problem. We have to get governments to actually do something other than incinerate it, put it in landfills, stick it in oceans, rivers, and sewers. Is really the control of data within the grasp of the people from a bottom-up standpoint, or do we have to find a way to get the governments, the regulatory bodies, to push it from top down? Or am I missing something? Is there a third way that we haven't thought of?
So I do actually see it in terms of 3 different parallel initiatives that we need to work on to solve the global issues of the data industry. Firstly, it is a little bit top-down. We definitely need the proper regulations and legislation to make sure we can force big tech companies like Facebook to do the right thing. Because I think we've all seen over the past many years that if you wait for companies that are motivated by profits alone to abide by ethical or moral guidelines, you're probably going to be waiting the rest of your life. We need regulations that actually spell out exactly what we don't believe as a society to be okay for our data to be used for, right? And so that's number one. That is kind of a top-down type of thing, but also I believe that everyone here should be actively voting for people who care about data protection and privacy, who care about regulation of social media companies, and you should be interacting with the people who are making these decisions and letting them know what is actually important to you. So it's not completely top-down. Democracy should be participatory. But secondly, education and awareness. Most people around the world, I would say, are not digitally literate enough to spot fake news and disinformation, to know basic cybersecurity protocols, or may not actually understand what is a privacy by design technology versus something that is taking a lot more data from you than you ever expected. So digital literacy programs are mostly what I've been working on at the Own Your Data Foundation. We teach a curriculum called DQ, like IQ or EQ. DQ is a digital intelligence quotient. You can learn more about the indicator set at dqinstitute.org. And that's everything from what are your data rights to understanding those basic cybersecurity protocols, being media literate so you can spot fake news and disinformation or hacking and phishing attempts, learning about your digital footprint and how that creates an online reputation, how digital targeting works, how you can manage your screen time so you don't become addicted to technology. You can protect your mental and physical health. But again, as you said, that's putting too much onus on the individuals at the moment. And so what I really see as both a bottom-up and top-down is what technologies we are using. As individuals, we should start using technologies that give us transparency into what data is being collected about us, give us actual consent into what data is being collected and where it's going, who it's being used by, what it's being used for. And then, of course, this multi-trillion-dollar industry that we are the producers of the world's most valuable asset, we should be using technologies that allow us to monetize our own data in a private, safe, secure, anonymous way, so that we could perhaps contribute our medical data to research studies. We could contribute our driving data to our smart cities infrastructure to make sure we don't have as many traffic accidents. There's a lot of really interesting ways that we can contribute as individuals, while we, of course, advocate on a top-down level for large-scale companies and governments to start using more ethical technologies. I'm a big fan of blockchain technology, as my friend Stewart is here. And so the large-scale implementation of encryption technologies that allow us to control our data, that give us that transparency and consent mechanisms, that allow us to monetize our own personal information, that is just starting. We are on the precipice of these large-scale implementations of distributed ledger technology, of encryption, of even quantum resistance being implemented in blockchain. And that's pretty exciting to me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it is very, very exciting, but I'm gonna maybe just counter with something, from a psychological standpoint. socio-political, possibly. When we think back, I can see a couple of people in the room here who might remember the days when you got software on a CD and it came with a label, and the label said, when you break this label, you have agreed to the terms and conditions. You remember that? That was before the time when we used to just click next, 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 yes, to agree to terms and conditions. As a joke one time when I was running a software company, I didn't put the terms and conditions in the box. I just put that label on there, and I wrote into the terms and conditions, we reserve the right to take your firstborn child after 21 days from using this software. Of course, we never did, but we just had it in there, and nobody ever asked for the terms and conditions to check what it actually said. Humans are, I'm afraid, me included, inherently lazy. We don't do things like check whether TikTok is looking at all of our biometric data, our accelerometer data, our location data, which it is. It's looking at every app we open and how often, and which apps we prefer and all of that. It's feeding that back into a database. How are we going to take something like, for example, something powered by blockchain? Frankly, it doesn't matter what it's powered by. It could be anything. How are we going to take that and get it into the hands of everyone in a form that is as easy as contactless payment? You don't think about it. It's got to be super simple, and it's got to pander to the fact that humans are inherently lazy. How we do it?
Absolutely, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, because, before I go into this little discussion, can I get a raise of hands of how many people have actually read the terms and conditions of an app that they use all the time? We're a web summit, so obviously we're going to get some hands, but I would say if you don't have a law degree or multiple law degrees, even if you read it, you probably didn't fully understand what it said. And that's been done on purpose to make sure that we are agreeing to give away more than we would actually agree to if we understood what we were signing. But if someone came to you in person and they handed you a pile of paper contracts, you would never flip to the end of each contract and just sign it without ever reading it. And that's what we do all day long with our technology. Not just apps we download on our phone, but every single website that we go to that is collecting our data and placing spyware or tracking cookies on each of our devices to learn everything about us. And so what we need to be thinking about, which a lot of governments and regulatory bodies have been thinking about over the past couple of years, is how do we increase transparency? How do we make this more simple? Especially in the United States, the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, has recently been saying that this is against consumer protection standards. It actually violates some of their regulations because people don't understand what they're agreeing to. And if there is not true informed consent, then how can you actually say that everybody agreed to give away this data? So now that this is being seen as a violation of regulations, there's a lot of new technologies that are coming out. I would say my favorite was built by my friend Joe Toscano, who you guys might recognize from The Social Dilemma. He used to be a designer at Google until he left for ethical reasons after they kept on asking him to design ways to trick people into giving away their data. And he created something called the Beacon Network, and their first product is a plug-and-play so that any company can actually just download that plugin and drag and drop the different parts of terms and conditions that they would like for their company. And it's a one line. Every single line is a first grade reading level that you can toggle on and off. And if you toggle all of them off, you decide not to opt in, you can still use the product. So we're really getting there in terms of ethics and transparency, and something that is easy to use as a one click for people to really understand and I think really become more conscious users of technology, which I believe shouldn't have to be a generational thing. I think over the next couple years we can get there. It's going to take a lot of breaking of bad habits, which I think is really difficult, even for me.
Well, slightly esoteric follow-up to that then. Well, breaking bad habits. I mean, famously, we know what happened. Data was being used against us. People that were slightly left of center maybe were being pushed right of center with, fake news to push their opinion in the right direction. Why the heck can't we use that Same theory, same process to educate people. Why can't we use that to push people away from binary thinking? Team left, team right, team red, team blue. That's part of the problem. Why can't we educate people about looking at terms and conditions within an easy-to-use system, or even just looking at them in the first place? Why can't we teach people about fact-checking by using the same process that was used in the Great Hack? Mm-hmm. Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we weaponizing that kind of AI and data and feeding of information for good?
Well, I do think that there are a lot more initiatives out there to use targeted advertising programs to actually educate people on digital literacy. I've seen some really interesting kind of guerrilla campaigns where you will target people with something that looks like a fake news ad, and when people click on it, it actually explains to you how fake news works, as opposed to taking you to an unreliable website that has not been vetted by any real or trustworthy journalist or fact-checked. And so it teaches you about how to become a more conscious consumer of that content, how to recognize fake news, how to explain that to your friends and your family, so you can not just educate yourself, but you can spread that awareness. And I think awareness is really the first step for people to really understand what that looks like, how to avoid it, how to make sure that you can find real sources of information. I mean, Stewart, as a journalist, you must have been really upset over the past few years that fake news, instead of referring to inaccuracies in news, has started to be used as a smear campaign for real media organizations, for journalists that are ethical, journalists that do their fact-checking, and journalists that will actually be held legally liable if they print something that is untrue. So I think we have a lot of work to do there in terms of not just education, but using new technologies that can help people understand what is just data-driven targeting that is meant to influence them, or what is actually real information that they can rely upon.
All right, Brittany, I'm going to challenge you to give everybody in this room a 30-second takeaway. What is the one thing that everyone in this room can do right now to protect their data and gain back some of their data privacy and security?
I would highly recommend checking out my website, ownyourdata.foundation, for tons of different resources that will teach you about everything from privacy by design technologies, using Signal instead of WhatsApp, using Brave browser, DuckDuckGo instead of Google Chrome, all the way to the DQ Institute resources where you can actually undertake a digital literacy program. It's 8 to 10 hours. It teaches you about everything in digital literacy topics, and you can especially use it with your children if you are a teacher, if you have a family at home, and I couldn't recommend more highly taking the time to dive into those resources, because they are endlessly valuable, and I do hope that the next generation does not get put into the same situation that we've had to deal with over the past many years.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Please put your hands together for Brittany Kaiser.
And for Stewart Rogers. Thank you, guys.